Mountain Ranch and some of the homesteading out in Bear Valley when you were a kid.
Yeah, that part. So you'll have to ask the question so he'll know what he's supposed to say or what.
You don't care if I...
And your family?
Yeah.
Where did you come from to Bear Valley, and how long were you there? And
come from Cascade, McCall. And there in 1918. Spring of 1918. We stayed there about 2 years, give or take. And there was, all told, there was about
Sylvia should have a better chair.
about 13 homesteaders in there.
and this was right near Bruce Meadows, right?
It's in Bruce Meadows and Poker Flat and right in the lower end of the valley
of
there.
Bear Valley.
And then we left there in the fall of 1920 and moved into Stanley. Because the way it was, we had there was three of us at that time going to school. Well, naturally they wouldn't let us stay in there and get away from our 3 R's. So we moved out to Stanley and in order to go to school. And we stayed in Stanley until December of 22, I think it was.
Well, so
And that's when we moved down here to finish school. Because Clinton and I was in about the 7th grade at that time, you see.
the winters that you spent in Bear Valley, your mother taught you, or you just didn't go to school at all?
Go to school.
And there were 5 of you at that time?
5 kids. And Mother was awful sick that winter, and that's when the main reason that Dad moved out, because and there was one other family there, was all.
For that winter?
The rest of them was bachelor.
Did you go out at all during the winter? You stayed in there all winter?
You couldn't get out only on snowshoes.
Please stop there.
Start our third question.
Oh, I said hold that thought. What was it?
Okay, well, let's start about school again. He was talking about
One winter.
one winter.
The first winter we went back to Cascade, and then we come back into Bear Valley and stayed the one winter. And then the next fall we went into Stanley.
And where did you live when you moved into Stanley?
Well, you know where Bill Lamb's place is down there right on the creek bank?
Bill Ham's place, sure.
Yeah, or Ham's.
Right.
We bought a house there, sitting right on the creek bank. You see, that's where the road went across the creek then. And we lived in that about a year. And then when we left there, we just moved down here.
Did you move to this house?
Oh, no. No, we didn't. Well, let's see now. I don't know. We bought this place in 29, I think, or 30. But we rented up until then. Well, when we moved out of Stanley, it was the 11th day of December in 1922. And, of course, the Connyers' luck was running just right, because they had scheduled the mail to be carried starting that day to be brought out with teams and sleighs, because they run a mail with sleighs to Robinson Bar and then switched to trucks from there on. Well, Addie Hansen was a stage driver on this end. And he said that being there was a family coming out with a bunch of little brats, why he'd make one more trip. Well, he did, all right. And he just damn near got snowed in. We had to get a team of horses and a sleigh to break road for us to get out, and we left Stanley about daylight and got into Robinson Bar about dark. And then down here the next day.
Yeah, you stayed all night at Robinson Bar.
Took them 2 days to get down here from Stanley.
And that was about, and then from then on, we just been living right here.
Except for, you did spend time in Stanley and working on the Rocky Mountain Ranch.
Well, we used
building
to,
that.
we used to go up there. Dad finally went to work for the Forest Service's maintenance on roads and stuff, and we used to spend the summers in Seafoam and Loon Creek and Stanley and around that way. And Dad, while we was in Stanley, Dad, to make ends meet, he invented a wood saw, power wood saw, and he started sawing wood for all those guys in Stanley. Put out the winter's wood.
Is that the model on top?
That's the model on top of the
Is that-
refrigerator.
Oh, it was for like cordwood for wood stoves.
Yes, it was just kitchen wood, 16-inch kitchen wood. Furnished putting everybody in Stanley with wood that winter.
Do you know what he charged to do that?
Oh, I would imagine about maybe $5-6 a cord or something like that. He went to the woods and got it and sawed it and delivered it and stacked it up.
For that.
And we done the same thing 1 year here, only we jumped the price up to $10 a cord. And hauled it from the top of Morgan Creek Summit with teams and sleighs. Which is,
And first you used teams and sleighs and things in Stanley when you did it.
Well,
up
I
there,
did.
too, or-
done it all in the summertime. And he worked on the county roads part of the time and then got wood the rest of the time.
When did you work at the Rocky Mountain Ranch? How did you come
Well,
about?
the year that was in 29 and 30 when they built that.
And where did the logs come from for that?
Well, they started getting the logs up, isn't it Williams Creek? The next one just above the lodge, up the river. Well, they got the biggest part of them from there, and they finally ran out of timber, and then they went down, what's his name? Right down there, just as you come out on the highway and then drop down on the bench there.
Oh, it used to be, it's Niders, it was, Fiddlers? Up that canyon?
No. The guy that used to drive the stage from Stanley to
Just below Hanson's, there,
just going towards Hanson's, just
okay.
about a quarter of a mile from where you turn into the Rocky Mountain Ranch. Those buildings on the left there.
Pierce?
Oh, it was Fleming's.
Oh,
Fleming's,
yes.
just below,
Martin and-
just
yeah.
below Fleming's is.
Okay, so that'd be about where Rimbers lives.
Yeah, it is. It's the same place. And we went across the river and got the rest of them over there on that hill. And they were all hauled in with wagons and horses. And they had,
Were they green logs?
they cut them green and peeled them, and then loaded them all and hauled them in. And then they had crews that laid them up.
Did you use all lodge pole?
You said you mixed a lot of all the cement for.
Well, I done odd jobs all over all the time that place was being built, right from the ground up. They had just started when I went to work there in the spring of 29, and I worked until the lodge was open in about July of 30, and I spent the rest of that year, I and my brother building those fences on the ranch. And Dad and Mother took care of the dairy cows for the club and run the ranch and done the irrigating and the haying and all that kind
Who
of
owned it at that time?
stuff. Same outfit. Well, I can't think of his name now, but he was a big shot in
Yeah. We can-
General Motors.
Yeah, we can find out that.
Yeah.
later.
And it was quite a few years after that before it was ever sold. I don't know when it was sold. But I can safely say that I helped handle the biggest part of those logs, one some way or other.
Did you help with the chinking and any of the other parts?
Well, yes, as far as that chinking and daubing and one thing and another, I mixed the biggest part of the material that place was chinked with. Cement and mortar is what it is.
Yeah.
And I mixed putting all that by hand and delivered it to them.
In a wheelbarrow or?
It's still the same. It's still
Well,
the original.
the last time I was up there, it looked like pretty much the same stuff.
Yes.
And then, you see, all those places has got double fireplaces in. And I mixed putting there all the mortar for laying that rock and stuff. And Dad, Russell putting there all the rock. Just local rock we picked up around on the hillsides there. And like I say, I think the club opened, I think it was in July of 1930. That's when they opened for business. And then it fell to me to build that lake out in front, that fish pond. And I done that with a team of horses and a Fresno. Made those two cuts on each side and made that dam in there. They put up a concrete core for that dam. Well, I think they pulled the material off too quick. The forms and stuff, and before I got the dirt started in there, why, the dam core fell over. And I said, oh, we'll just bury it, so we did.
Did you build the little cabins around it too? The
Oh,
round
yes,
cabins?
everything.
All built at the same time?
Yeah, they had crews working on they had crews of putting in several crews working several different cabins at the same time and the big lodge at the same time. They had a crew of, I'd say about 50 men working on it.
Where did they all live? Did they just pitch tents?
Had camps set all around there in the brush.
Did they bring their families with them? Or?
Well, a lot of them did, but a lot of them, they had a boarding house and all that kind of stuff there, you see. Sitting right there right in the area down in that draw where those lower cows. And then they put in that power plant and all that.
It's a hydro plant, isn't it? Comes in the little creek.
See, it comes out of Gold Creek in the ditch around the bar and then comes down a penstock into the firehouse. Well, it fell to me to dig that ditch. Well, 6 head of horses on a grader. I and Dad built a ditch out of Gold Creek.
Yeah. How about the lights that are in that dining room? Do you know did you get those out, or they're twisted and
Well,
stumps and things?
yes, they were gotten out along at about the same time, and probably just made out of waste of the other logs. And they had a regular crew of electricians come in there. I think it was on a contract basis, undoubtedly. And those big, I'll have to tell you about that though. You know those big rails on the front porch? Those big logs that's sliding to, and they're about as wide as this table. Well, that come out of a draw right up behind the lodge and down into a little basin. And it took 6 head of horses and block and tackle and stuff to get that logs up out of the draw on top, and then from there on in we could, all downhill, we could get it with horses without the block and tackle. And that's the way we had to work them days. We didn't have these D9s and all that kind of stuff to log with.
There's big logs and it would have been a lot of work.
How about the plumbing? Did it have running water
Oh yes, everything. It was
from a spring or?
all modern. It well, let's see. I don't remember just where they got the water, but it. I don't know whether the water was separate from the power plant or whether it was taken out of the same. But I kind of, well, I wouldn't say now, because I don't remember that far back as to exactly where the water come from. But no, there was water, electricity, and everything else right from the day it opened. But it was DC instead of an AC current electricity. Somebody sold them a pig in the poke when they sold them that power plant. Because it was all DC current. And then the last time I was on that place was in 1950. I was on the ranch down there. I went back up there as a partnership deal on a lease on that whole shebang in 49-50, I think it was. Well, before we could get the lease redone, why, there was a Austrian. They finally found him in Europe, someplace, and he bought it before we could get a renewal on the lease, and he sold it to Ed Bogart. And I can't remember his name now.
You were just up there 1 year then on the partnership thing?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
Did you run dudes or just cows?
Well, we had the first year, well, we were still running them. We used to run those trail rides back through the Sawtooth Mountains over into South Fork of the Payette. Every year we run 2 of those. That took all the way from about 30 head of stock to, I think the biggest one we had was biggest string was about 65, 70 head of saddle stock and pack stock.
How long would you be out when you do that?
About 10 days, 8 to 10 days, I forget which it was.
Did you go over like into Atlanta or just up?
No, it was usually dropped down. Well, they went in one time from Altours Lake and come back out, I think at Redfish Lake, and then there was one time they went in, I think, and went the other direction. And I don't know, I never was on one of those trips because it fell to me to stay at the ranch and do the irrigating and stuff like that.
Did you have many cows in there too, or?
Well, yes, we had on a share basis, we had about 80 head of purebred Herefords leased on a share basis, and about that many black-faced sheep that we run on the ranch.
And you kept them there summer and winter? You fed them in the winter?
Pitched hay all winter long, pile it up in the fall, and then in the summer, and then tear the piles down in the wintertime and scatter it out.
Brian, didn't you say that your dad packed in to Thunder Mountain sometime? When was that?
Oh, that was way back in about 1902.
When, who wrote all those western stories and stuff was up there?
It was old Zane Grey.
Zane Grey was up
It
there.
was before the mountain slid, and when the town of Roosevelt was still there, when he packed into Thunder Mountain.
And
He
Brian,
packed in there in 1902 or 1903, 1901, somewhere along in there. Well, it was before he and Mother was married, and they was married in 1902, I think. So he and his dad run that big pack string in there before that. Well, Dad was about 18 years old. And they had 60 mules in their one string.
how many?
60.
60. Huh, that's a
And he
lot.
packed freight in there. He didn't pack dudes. This was freight.
No, that was
for this
to
town
get the
Roosevelt.
grubs and the machinery in there.
That's about the time it was starting out to be active, yeah.
Yeah, and then that, excuse me, that it only run just a few years and then closed down. And I think it was 1908 is when that landslide come in and buried the town of Roosevelt. I think it was 8.
When you were building the Rocky Mountain Ranch, what did you get paid? What was your wages? Was it a monthly or an hourly or a contract? Or?
It was 50 cents an hour. 9 hours a day. So I was just getting rich 4.5 a day.
And you worked, what, 6 days, 7 days a week?
6 days. Oh, they did let us have Sunday off. So we'd go to town Saturday night and get drunk and then have Sunday to sober up.
What town did you go to?
Huh?
What town did you go to?
Stanley?
What saloon?
Oh, well, the saloon then in Stanley was, the main one that we patronized was where Wayne Willard's place burned down.
Yeah, the old Stanley Club.
Yes, that was the main one.
May have been called a Pioneer Club then, I'm not sure.
I don't remember what it was then. It was a bootleg joint and gambling joint.
Who was running it then?
Eddie Martin.
Eddie Martin?
Was Ace of Diamonds dance hall there
Oh yes.
at that time?
Oh, that was the gang holdout. That was the only building in town big enough to handle the crowd. Because at that time, no, I was going to say at that time there was CCs in there, but they didn't come in until about 34, 33, 34. But there was, at the time we was working on in the spring of 1930, when I was working there at the club, there was a highway construction moved in to build part of that highway along about there, someplace in the Sawtooth Valley anyway. And Galena Summit was still snowed in. They moved in from this way. And that was in, I think, early May. Well, the Idaho Rocky Mountain Ranch, they agreed to furnish a bunch of men, but, well, these two contractors got together, and they wanted to open that summit up a little ahead of time. So they each furnished about 20 to 25 men, and they'd go up there in the morning with scoop shovels and shovel snow all day long, and then come home at night. And it took us about 3 days of shoveling snow before we could buck through with the truck. And some places the snow was deep enough that when you got down to the bottom of the hole, you throwed it up on the shelf, and then there was some guys up there that throwed it on out of the hole.
So it took 40 men about 3 days to
Shovel the drifts out.
And people think they work hard nowadays.
And I drove the first. We got it all shoveled out. And then the boss come to me and he said, we had a Model T truck, ton truck. And that was the only truck in the country at that time. He wanted to know if I wanted to make a trip to catch him to get a load of freight. So Dad said, yeah, go ahead and take the truck. So I got in that old Model T and went over the hill. And they'd been one small empty truck and a car that I was driving over after we'd shoveled the snow out. And I got in Ketchum and Haley. I got a little jag, maybe I had 1,000 pounds of freight or something like that. Bunch of shovels and tools and water buckets and you name it, just a little bit of everything, and started back. Well, I pulled out of Ketchum about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was about 3 o'clock the next morning when I got into with that Model T bucking that snow out coming up.
Where did you come in? Where did you come with all that stuff?
From Haley or Ketchum?
Yeah, from
Into
Ketchum.
Chalice, you mean?
No, the Rocky Mountain Ranch.
Oh, to the Rocky Mountain Ranch. Oh, I see.
That was the first load of freight that spring over the hill. And then the company got their truck running. Got the truck in, they got the truck running. And so they done the freighting from then on. So that just about winds up that little ball of yarn.
Tell about the hardware at the ranch. Didn't they have a blacksmith shop or a shop right there on the ranch?
Oh yes, I helped the blacksmith there when I wasn't doing something else once in a while. But all the hinges and all the door catches and everything on every building there was made right there in that blacksmith shop from scrap iron.
All handmade?
All handmade. And there's no two sets of hinges alike, as you'll notice.
Right.
They've all got a different design. Well, all the hardware, hinges, and all that stuff was made right there in a coal forge by hand. That guy was, well, he was a wizard, that's all there was to it.
You know, I just remembered who the guy was that had the ranch. He owned Frigidaire company, that made the refrigerators. It had something to do with General Motors, because there's a beautiful Frigidaire still in the kitchen there at the ranch. Real fancy.
And
the radiators in the cars. A lot of those things looked around.
Yeah.
the guy that had the contract to build him that place was just a common name, but he was a contractor out of Twin Falls, I think.
Was he Olson or no?
Well, it was some type,
Something like that.
Olson or Johnson or Nelson, or it was just a common name.
Scandinavian, like,
Well,
sort of.
the foreman was big, tall, red-headed Swede, but he was working for the contractor. And I can't even think of the boss's name now. But he was a big, tall, kind of a sandy complected Swede. He had even a brogue and everything else.
Did he design it?
Oh no. No,
Just build it.
he was just the foreman,
Yeah.
the overseer of the construction of it. He was the guy that told us what to do and how to do it.
Who was it? Your dad and you and Shorty were working there?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else in the family?
Just the three of us.
Anybody else that still lives there, or that's still in the valley or has lived there in the past? Did they work there like any of the Williams or Hansons or Flemings
Hanson's
or
wasn't even there.
Shaws or
Shaw's, I don't believe that any of the Shaws worked on it.
or the Nieces or Critchfields or Merritts or none of them?
Flemings did. Of course, well, not Harry, but Harry's oldest brother did. Because Harry was too much of a kid, I think, at that time to work. And, Cliff's mother's first husband, he was one of the wranglers.
Now Fred Fleming.
Fred. He was one of the wranglers because they had quite a string of saddle stock and all that kind of stuff, you see. And they took out riders and all that. There was him and another guy. There was a head, and Bill Hamilton. And that's about the only ones that I knew real well that was working there.
I understand that at one time was a tennis court there. Did you have anything to do with
Yes, I helped
building
build
the
that.
tennis
That
court?
was right out in front of between there and the lake.
And was it a concrete or?
Well, I don't know whether it was concrete faced or not.
I had heard at one time that it was wood. That it was a wooden.
I think it was. I think it was just a wooden, well, I know it was since you mentioned it. That's the reason it isn't there inside anymore. Just rotted away, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that was unusual, a wooden tennis court.
It was just a small one. I don't think it's much bigger than this house.
One time I was talking to Shorty and he talked about some of the trails in the Sawtooth. This is off the subject of the ranch that he worked on. Did you ever work on any of those, Brian?
No, I never went to work for the Forest Service until, well, I'd worked for them when I was still going to high school down here in the summertime. And then, I went to work for them the last time and continued on until I retired and started the last time in 55. After I'd worked 10 years in the mines, a hitch in the CCs, and built bridges around the country and one thing and another. Like Dad always said, I was about like him. I was a jack of all trades and master of none. Yes,
Yeah, like
that is part of it.
Yeah.
Part of the ground, there was actually about three ranches is what the Rocky Mountain Club consisted of. There was Tom Williams, and they made a swap some way or other with Dave Williams for some ground. And then putting all that hayfield up there was the old Gillespie place. And maybe part of the Snyder place, I don't know. But from Obsidian Post Office on down, you see, they bought all that ground. And the upper end of that meadow was C.W. Gillespie's. And then down there where the buildings were in Hot Springs and one thing another on the river, that was Tom Williams' place. And then I don't know just what all in between there, but they wound up with, well, everything, but the only thing that was left below there was, along the river was the place that Bill Sullivan was on and Stub Merritt and them. But that was part of the Williams spread, you see. And then you see, to top it all off with, right where, right up on the bar there, where there used to be a little airstrip.
That's still there, Swiss Villa.
Yeah, I built that. That is, worked on it. I had quite a harrowing experience with that after when I was back up there in 1950. That young Bogart was going to take me to Idaho Falls to pick up a truck, or to Pocatello, I mean. Well, he had a little Piper Club, or a little puddle jumper airplane, and we went up there and got in the plane on the field, and out at the end of the strip there going up the river, there was a 4-wire fence. And he said, I don't believe I can get over that fence on my takeoff with 2 of us in it.
Big plane.
So he said, why don't you get out and go over on the highway? And he said, I'll get up and go down and make a circle and land going up on the highway. That was when the highway was there now, and it was, I don't think it was blacktop then, I think it was just dirt, but it was a good smooth, and no fence in the way. So then I bailed in and off we took. We finally got up above, the fence post time we got up about Altorse Lake country. And we got up there to the summit, and I knew what the elevation of that summit was, and I was sitting there looking at the altimeter, and I had both fingers crossed. I thought, boy, you're going to have to get some more poof out of this plane, or we're not going to get over the top. So we got right up in the top there, over French Creek, and he made a circle, and he had her eared back just as far as she'd go, and it was just a screaming, and he finally got enough, and then we couldn't go over the summit where the road is, but he went up and over the summit at the head of, what's the name of that creek?
That's Smiley,
No,
the other way.
Pole Creek.
Yeah, Paul, that's it.
Well, that is not quite so high. Well, I was sitting there, and the further I went, the shakier I got, because I thought, well, they'll pick us up with a case knife off on the hillside up here. And when we got right up, I knew he was going to head down the mountain, because it was about as far as near to the Pioneer Courts over there, and still sticking up in the air. And I happened to look at the elevator. I was about reading it pretty much, because I didn't have nerve enough to look at the ground. And we had an updraft, and he knew what he was headed for, you see. And we went it felt like we went straight up 200 feet, and I could pick pine cones on the top of the trees. And I knew he couldn't stop because his brakes wouldn't stop that quick. But he knew that, and he looked at me and kind of grinned, and he said, we hit that one just right, didn't we? And I said,
You got to drive back, so that was okay, yeah.
yeah, I drove the truck back.
I'd rather truck than that plane.
And then we got down to finish that plane ride out, we got down to Ketchum, or to Haley. And the old gas gauge was just hitting the pin on empty. Had for the last 100 miles, seemed like. So we went in there to gas up, and they had never mowed the runway or anything, and it was covered with a pretty heavy stand of clover. And it's about that high, I guess. And that little plane, he made 2 passes at that before he could set it down, because the plane was running this way, and the way the air currents was, he had to hit it kind of angling. So he finally went across there, got us down, and we gassed up, and then he had to go right down through this clover field to get airborne, and the south end of that airstrip run right out off from the bank there, right off into Wood River. Well, that's the only way we got airborne. We just run out of ground underneath this. It finally took off.
What kind of plane was it?
Oh, a little Piper Cub or something like that. It was a 2-place plane, is what it was. You could pick it up and carry it, a couple of good men.
This was in 1950, probably the 40s.
And that was at, I don't remember which one of the Bogart boys it was.
Is that the one that died then, or?
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I think so. I think that's the one that was killed in the plane.
Yeah.
hmm
D, wasn't there a D Bogart?
D, that was the guy. That was the oldest one, wasn't it?
I don't know.
2 boys and a girl, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Was he, what's his name, Larry? Anyway.
I don't know.
Well, I see in the same plane wreck was when, Smith was killed, wasn't it?
Rose Alice's husband.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was both in the same plane. That happened out there around Fairfield or someplace out there, I think.
Who's Rose Allen?
And that's the sister.
That was Bogart's sister. She's the one that controls the club now.
Yeah, that had, there were 2 boys, and D and another one, and Rose Allen.